The first thing I saw was the red and blue glow crawling across my living room wall like a warning sign. And the first thing I heard was a siren screaming straight toward our driveway. I stepped onto my porch and froze. 2 patrol cars were sliding to a stop out front and across the street. Linda Whitmore stood there smiling like she'd just won the lottery. My wife Megan was holding a garden hose in both hands like it was a weapon she didn't even want to use. For a second my brain couldn't make the pieces fit because we weren't criminals. We were literally setting up a neighborhood fire safety demo. But Linda, our HOA president, had decided that a little water on a Saturday morning was the hill she wanted us to die on. I'm Ethan Parker, 38, the kind of guy who likes quiet routines and hates attention. And the worst part is, we moved into Willow Creek Estates because it promised exactly that. Clean sidewalks, friendly waves, a little lake at the end of Cedar Ridge Lane, picture perfect, the kind of place you think will heal your stress instead of creating it. Then you meet the Homeowners Association. At first the HOA emails were just background noise. Reminders about trash cans approved, paint shades, lawn height, community standards. You shrug, you comply, you move on. Except Linda didn't treat those rules like guidelines. She treated them like a crown. Linda Whitmore was mid-50s, always in crisp athleisure, like she'd just left a country club, blonde hair that never moved, and a clipboard that might as well have been welded to her arm. She had this voice, too sweet on top, sharp underneath, like every sentence came with a hidden fee attached. The first week we moved in, she introduced herself at our mailbox like she was welcoming us to a kingdom. Willow Creek is very particular, she said, smiling. But you'll learn. Megan squeezed my hand and smiled back, polite, calm, the way she always is when someone's trying to push her around. My wife is 40, former firefighter, medically retired after a knee injury, and she still volunteers with the city whenever they run community safety events. Fire extinguishers, smoke alarms, escape routes, that kind of thing. Linda heard the word firefighter, and her eyes did this little flicker like she'd just met someone she couldn't intimidate with a fine. A month later, we started getting violations. Trash bin visible from the street at 4:07 p.m. Grass exceeding the approved height. Mailbox paint not within approved charcoal range. It was ridiculous, but it was also constant, one email after another, each one written like a threat in polite clothing. Megan tried to ignore it. I tried to ignore it. But ignoring Linda was like ignoring a mosquito in your ear. Eventually, you stopped sleeping. Then the drought restrictions hit. The city sent out clear guidelines, limited watering days. No sprinklers during certain hours, conserve where you can. We were already careful because, we're not monsters. But Linda treated the drought like a personal upgrade to her authority. She started patrolling the street twice a day. Not joking, twice a day. You'd see her slow walking past houses with her phone angled just right, snapping pictures like a paparazzi chasing celebrities. Except the celebrities were people's lawns. One afternoon, Megan was in our driveway rinsing a couple training props for a kid's fire safety program, lightweight, non-pressurized, basically plastic equipment used for demonstrations. She had a small bucket, a hose on the lowest flow, and the whole thing would have used less water than one person taking a long shower. Linda walked right up heels, clicking on concrete like punctuation. Drought restriction, she said, holding her phone up. Non-essential water use is prohibited. Megan didn't even flinch. This is equipment for a city-approved public safety event. It's permitted, and I have the documents. Linda's smile tightened. The HOA has standards. Megan looked at her for a beat. So does the fire department. I should have known that moment would become personal. Because after that, Linda wasn't just enforcing rules. She was hunting us. When Megan mentioned she'd like to host a small fire safety demo for the neighborhood, something simple, educational, helpful. Linda acted like Megan had suggested burning the whole subdivision down. You can't do that here, Linda said at an HOA meeting loud enough for everyone to hear. Water waste liability noise. Absolutely not. Megan slid a folder across the table. City permit. Water department approval. It's a controlled demonstration, minimal usage. It's for the kids. The other board members glanced through the paperwork, nodded, and one of them, this quiet guy named Mark, said, "Seems fine." Linda's jaw clenched. Well, she said, forcing a smile back onto her face, "I'll be watching every drop." The week leading up to the demo, I felt like we were being stalked by a woman with a rulebook addiction. Linda drove past our house slowly. She stood across the street pretending to check mail while staring directly at our driveway. She even knocked once, holding a printed list, and said, "I noticed you have guests coming this weekend. Please remember that gatherings must remain orderly." I stared at her. "It's a safety class, Linda." She didn't blink. Exactly. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold, the kind of clear day that makes everything look innocent. Kids showed up with parents excited, curious. Megan was in her element, calm, confident, telling stories about smoke alarms and escape ladders like she was giving people something valuable instead of selling them a product. The city sent a support unit, one of those community outreach rigs, not a full emergency response, just a truck and a couple personnel to help with the educational part. It looked official because it was official, and Linda stood on her porch with her phone already in her hand. I remember noticing her posture, arms folded, chin lifted, like she was waiting for the moment she could press a button and make the world punish us. Megan went through everything responsibly. She explained how grease fires work, showed how to use an extinguisher, walked kids through stop, drop, and roll. Parents were actually listening, nodding, asking questions. Then she set up the final demonstration. One quick controlled spray, a small amount of water to show how fast flames can spread and how important early response is. She attached the hose, checked the pressure, and looked over at the crowd. "Okay," she said, "this is the part you'll remember." That's when Linda's voice sliced through the air. "I'm calling 911. The entire street went silent. Megan turned slowly. "Linda, don't." Linda didn't even look at her. She stared at her phone fingers moving fast, and then she said loudly, "Yes, hello, I need police. There's illegal water use during a drought and a public disturbance in Willow Creek Estates." I felt my stomach drop, because calling 911 isn't a complaint. It's a weapon. And Linda used it like she'd been waiting her whole life to squeeze the trigger. 10 minutes later, the patrol cars rolled in, lights, flashing sirens, chirping once like they were announcing us to the neighborhood. Kids started whispering. Parents pulled their children closer, and I stood there thinking, this can't be real. This cannot be real. One officer stepped out, hand resting near his belt, scanning the scene like he expected a fistfight. He looked at Megan, then at the fire truck, then at the little demonstration setup. "Who called?" he asked. Linda strutted forward like she owned the asphalt. "I did," she said. "As president of the HOA, I'm enforcing our community standards. They're wasting water and creating a disturbance." The officer blinked. "Ma'am, this looks like a public safety demonstration." "It's unauthorized," Linda snapped, "and it's during a drought." Megan took a slow breath. I could see the discipline in her face, the firefighter training kicking in the part of her that knows how to control a scene, even when someone is trying to set it on fire. "It's authorized," she said, calm. "City permit, water department approval, I can show you." The officer held up a hand. Okay, let's all take a step back." And in that moment, standing there in my own driveway being treated like I might be breaking the law because a woman with a clipboard didn't like us, I felt this wave of humiliation hit so hard it made my ears ring. I looked at the parents watching. I looked at the kids. And I thought maybe we should have just kept our heads down. Maybe we should have never tried to do something good. Maybe Linda was right and we were the problem. It's a terrible thought because it sneaks in like poison. And for a few seconds I believed it. I actually felt myself shrink. I imagined selling the house packing boxes, telling Megan we should stop volunteering, stop standing out, stop giving Linda reasons. I imagined the peace of disappearing. Then another vehicle pulled up, and the air shifted. A man stepped out wearing a fire department jacket. Captain Anthony Reyes, the guy coordinating the outreach unit that day. He looked at Megan, recognition on his face, and then his eyes cut straight to the officers. "What's going on?" he asked, voice steady and sharp. The officer explained, and Reyes didn't even look at Linda at first. He looked at the permit folder in Megan's hand. He flipped it open, scanned the pages, and then he finally turned toward Linda like she was an unexpected problem on an otherwise normal day. "You called 911 for this?" he asked. Linda lifted her chin higher. "Yes, the HOA rules are clear." Reyes let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but not amused. "Ma'am, this is a permitted public safety event. You're interfering with community outreach." Linda's face tightened. "I'm protecting the neighborhood." Reyes nodded once like he'd heard that line before in a very different context. "Then you should know false reports tie up emergency resources." The officer's expression changed. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just that subtle shift where someone goes from sorting out a misunderstanding to realizing someone's abusing the system. He looked at Linda. "Ma'am, did you knowingly report illegal activity?" Linda's confidence wobbled for the first time. There's a drought." Reyes cut in. "There's a permit." Another officer stepped closer, and I could see phones coming up around the crowd, neighbors recording now, because once people realized the bully might finally get exposed, they stopped staying quiet. Linda looked around and saw it too. Her audience wasn't hers anymore. The officers didn't arrest her right there, but they did something almost worse for someone like Linda. They took control. They spoke to Megan respectfully. They reviewed the documents. They told Linda very plainly to stop interfering. And when one officer said misuse of emergency services is serious, Linda's mouth opened, and nothing came out. The patrol cars left and the neighborhood slowly exhaled, but I didn't feel relief. I felt shaken. I sat on our front steps after everyone went home, staring at the driveway like it belonged to someone else. Megan sat beside me quiet for a long time, then she said, "Hey." I didn't look at her. "What if we're the problem?" I asked, and hearing the words out loud made me hate myself for thinking them. Megan's voice softened. "Ethan, we did everything right." "Then why does it feel like we're always one phone call away from getting crushed?" I asked, and my throat tightened on the last word. She didn't answer immediately. She just put her hand on mine, firm grounding. "Because bullies don't need a reason," she said. "They just need you to back down." That was the moment I stopped imagining disappearing. Not because I suddenly became brave, but because I realized the cost of surrendering. If we backed down, Linda wouldn't stop. She'd just learned that calling the police works. She'd do it again. To us, to someone else, to anyone who didn't bow fast enough. So I did what I'd avoided doing since we moved in. I started talking to the neighbors. And once I opened that door, it was like a dam broke. A couple down the street told me Linda fined them for a birthday party that generated excessive laughter. A retired guy said she threatened to lean over a mailbox decoration. A single mom said Linda embarrassed her in front of her kids over chalk drawings on the sidewalk. People weren't just annoyed, they were scared. And they'd been waiting for someone to prove Linda could bleed. The videos from that morning spread through the neighborhood group chat like wildfire. Then the city got a complaint from Captain Reyes, official documented blunt. Then the HOA board members started getting emails, dozens, then hundreds. And suddenly Linda wasn't the one holding the clipboard. She was the one getting called into meetings. The emergency HOA meeting happened on a Tuesday night in a packed community room, and I could feel the tension humming under everyone's polite faces. Linda tried to start with her usual smile. "Thank you all for coming," a neighbor interrupted. "You called 911 on a fire safety demo." Another voice followed. "You wasted emergency resources." Another, "You've been harassing residents." Linda lifted her hands. "I was enforcing standards." Mark, the quiet board member, leaned into the microphone. "You were abusing authority." I watched Linda's eyes dart around like she expected her power to protect her. But power only works when people consent to it. And that night nobody consented. There was a motion to remove her enforcement privileges. Linda laughed sharp and offended. "You can't do that." Reyes had sent documentation. The city had concerns. Liability was on the table, and for once the board cared about something bigger than grass height. They voted. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just watched Linda's face as the result landed on her like a slab of concrete. Her mouth opened, and for the first time since we moved in, she had no scripted line to save her. A few weeks later, the legal part finished closing in. Because abusing 911 isn't just being dramatic, it has consequences. Linda took a plea, and the court hit her with a fine, probation, and community service. And the part that felt almost unreal, almost poetic, was what the community service actually was. Fire Department Public Education, supervised by Megan. I stood in the courtroom when the judge said it, and I watched Linda's expression flicker: rage, disbelief, humiliation, like her whole identity was collapsing in real time. No applause, no speeches, no victory lap. Just Linda Whitmore realizing the system she tried to weaponize had finally turned its weight back on her. And right then, right at the moment her smile finally died, I understood something simple. When you let a bully write the rules, everyone loses, until someone refuses to stay quiet.